Welcome to worship at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We are an open and affirming congregation that strives to be hospitable and attentive to all of creation. We do not always meet that goal, and we have our share of ups and downs. But in the midst of it all, we continue to listen to God's call on our individual lives and the life of this congregation. We continue to seek to follow Jesus, peacefully, simply, together. We are humbled you have chosen to worship with us. Welcome.
Good morning. Welcome to those of you on Channel 13 on YouTube and our friends over at the Cedars. Thanks for joining us this morning on Father's Day. So, do we have any joys, concerns that we'd like to share this morning?
Hi, I'm Leela Beam, and Maddie and Logan Schrog are expecting a baby in August. And so a group of us would like to have a baby shower for them, and it will be Wednesday, July 7 at 7 p.m. in the church social rooms. For a group gift, donations can be given to myself or Deb Van Asselt, and they are registered on Amazon and Target. So hope to see everyone there. Thanks.
We had a wonderful opportunity to celebrate Karma Wall's 22 years at the Cedars this last week. That was a good celebration to finally have with COVID going on. Also, a reminder, Prairie View is here using our facilities till the end of July. So if you're thinking about planning any activities, please go to the office because we don't have total access to the basement areas at this time. So we're glad that they're willing to use our space and that the church is willing to work with them. Any other joys or concerns?
Bill Grove. I would ask for prayers for my sister Jane. She's at Spurgeon Manor in Dallas Center, one of our brethren homes, and the hospice has given her a week. So prayers for us and our family.
We had 2 vans of teenagers leave for Camp Colorado this morning. One was full of girls and the other one was full of boys. So we need to keep them in our hearts and prayers.
What age was that? Fifth and sixth graders? Yeah, probably good we separated those two groups. We'll now take this time to gather ourselves for the service.
It's hard to miss the worship center here this morning. This week was Vacation Bible School, and the theme was Come to the Table. Thank you to everyone who made that possible, who spent their week with our children celebrating wonderful curriculum. Our kids are spread all over the place. They are at games and at camp and doing all kinds of things this summer. So what we decided to do to share with you, sometimes we've had all our kids congregate on a Sunday morning, and this year we decided with them in a million different places. We are all sending all of our pictures that we took on our phones to Eric Gehring, and Eric's going to put together a video, and we will post that to our YouTube site. We will also post it to our Facebook page. And then when everybody starts to return in August, we'll have the kids get back together, and we have a couple of wonderful songs that we want to teach the congregation. They're great songs, and we want to teach them to you and have you learn them so we can use them throughout the year. So this will be one of the things that we know has happened during pandemic is we have had to change and change quickly. And so in your worship schedule this morning, you will see for Children's Story that Laura Shoming is listed and that she was going to talk about Vacation Bible School. Well, she is not. She is with her own children at baseball games this morning, and she pre-recorded a book for us for Children's Time that is a wonderful book that she wanted to share with the kids. So that's a change in your order of worship this morning. In addition, we'll be advertising to you the fact that annual conference worships will be available to you. We have the graphics ready to go, and we have advertising ready to go, and we'll push that out to you. And those will be 7 o'clock worships, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of annual conference week, which starts on the 30th of June. And then on Sunday morning, that's actually the 4th of July. Annual conference worship is actually the 4th of July. We are not going to be here. We are taking worship on the road, and we are going over to the Wellness Center. And we are going to have worship at the Wellness Center, and that will be great because there's so many people at the Cedars who have not been able to physically come to church and are so hungry to see everybody and reconnect with everybody. It'll be the same time, 10:15 a.m. at the Wellness Center on the 4th of July. Hope you can be there. As we open this morning, let us focus on the words for the opening about time. May we be free to live in God's time, a new time, in which there is a time for everything under heaven, when slow is not too slow, and fast is not too fast. May we be transformed into people who see time as a gift and a friend, who live as if we have time, because we know that God's time will never cease. Please rise if you choose to, and join us in singing number 521, Come Thou Fount. seated. And let us enjoy as Laura brings us the book, Milo Changes the World.
At the McPherson Church of the Brethren, and happy Father's Day. I've had the honor of being at Bible school all week, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our theme, which was Come to the Table. Hopefully you've seen some signs of that around the sanctuary, but I've been thinking a lot about one of my new favorite children's books that was just released this year. It's called Milo Imagines the World, and I think it does a really good job of illustrating this theme of come to the table. Let's take a look. What begins as a slow, distant glow grows and grows into a tired train that clatters down the tracks. A cool rush of wind quiets into a screech of steel, and when the doors slide open, Milo slips aboard. The train bucks back into motion as he and his sister squeeze onto bench seats. The whiskered man beside Milo has a face of concentration. A businessman has a blank, lonely face. The wedding-dressed woman near the far door has a face made out of light, while the dog peeking out of her handbag has no face at all, just a long, lolling tongue. These monthly Sunday subway rides are never ending, and as usual, Milo is a shook-up soda. Excitement stacked on top of worry, on top of confusion, on top of love. To keep himself from bursting, he studies the faces around him and makes pictures of their lives. Oh, he says he's a shook-up soda because he's so full of all these different emotions. At a downtown local stop, the whiskered man folds up his crossword and hurries off the train. Milo imagines him trudging through brown mounds of slush. It's a 5-flight climb to his cluttered apartment where he's greeted by mewling cats and burrowing rats. Parakeets tweet songs of longing as the man sips tepid soup, hunched over a game of solitaire. Late that night, the door to the parakeet cage mysteriously falls open, and the cats gather on the cold sill to watch the birds fly free above the city. Oh, this is everything that Milo imagines for the man. It looks like he lives alone. Milo tugs his sister's sleeve and holds up his picture, but even when she turns to look, he can tell she doesn't see. She's a shook-up soda, too. A boy in a suit boards the train with his dad. His hair is a perfect part, and there's not a single scuff on his bright white Nikes. And here we can see what he imagines for this boy. Milo imagines the clop, clop, clop of the horse-drawn carriage that will carry him to his castle. Imagines the clink, clink, clink of the guards slowly lowering the drawbridge. Across the human-made moat, the boy is met by a butler, 2 maids, and a gourmet chef offering crust-free sandwich squares. Milo flips to a fresh page at a bustling midtown stop. When the wedding-dressed woman strides off the train, a band of street performers launches into Here Comes the Bride, and everyone on the platform stops and cheers. Wonder what he'll imagine for her. There it is. Milo imagines the grand cathedral ceremony where the couple will be pronounced husband and wife. Imagines the groom whisking his new bride to an awaiting hot air balloon, where the pilot loads them in with blankets and blasts the heat. And up, up they go, hand in hand, beyond the concrete walls of the city, into the infinite blue. Milo holds up this picture too, but his sister shoos him away. Can't you see I'm playing my game? He watches her thumbs bang around her smudged screen, then turns back to the boy in the suit. They lock eyes for a few long seconds, and suddenly it feels like the walls are closing in around Milo. Wonder if he still thinks that boy must be a prince. The spell is broken when a crew of breakers bounds onto the train announcing, "Y'all ready for a show?" Several curious faces look up as the beat drops. And now the girls are walking up walls, they're whirling around poles, they're backflipping over shopping bags. When the train pulls into the next stop, they collect a few dollars and scramble in for another car. Milo imagines them going from train to train, doing their act as everyone watches. But even after the performances are over, faces still follow their every move when they walk down the electronics aisle at the department store. Oh man, the clerk looks kind of angry. When they cross into the fancy neighborhood, even that security guard looks kind of angry. Milo doesn't really like this picture, so he puts away his pad and turns to his reflection in the window. What do people imagine about his face? Can they see him reciting his volcano poem to the class? Can they hear his mom's soothing voice reading him a bedtime book over the phone? Can they smell the chile colorado bubbling in a pot in his auntie's apartment near the cemetery? Butterflies flood Milo's stomach when it's finally their stop. He follows his sister onto the cold station platform and up the stairs. Above ground, he's surprised to see the boy in the suit a few paces ahead. Looks like he and the boy must be going to the same place. I wonder where they're going. He's even more surprised when the boy joins the long line to pass through the metal detector. Milo's sister suddenly bends to give him a hug. "I didn't mean to snap at you," she says. She takes his hand, adding, "You have your picture ready?" He nods, feeling the warmth of her fingers. As they slowly shuffle forward, Milo studies the boy in the suit, his dad rubbing his thin shoulders, and a thought occurs to him. Maybe you can't really know anyone just by looking at their face. Milo tries to reimagine all the pictures he made on the train. Maybe he could have done it like this instead. Look, instead of that man being alone, there he is with a family. He still has the bird and the cat, but everyone looks happy. Or this, it wasn't a bride and groom. Or this, look, the security guard now saying, "Welcome home." Milo's chest fills with excitement when he spots his mom through the crowd. His sister rushes to give her a hug before pulling Milo in too. And it's in this tight tangle of familiar arms that he feels most alive. Oh, look, he finally got to Mom. He looks so happy. Just like the little boy got to his mom, and he looks happy too. I see some clues on this page that finally tell me where Milo was going on the train. And it's not at all what I would have guessed. I see some security guards or police officers. And when I see everyone in orange like this, I'm thinking they must be in jail. That must have been really hard for Milo to go to the jail to visit his mom. When they separate, Milo flips through his pad until he finds the right picture. "I made this for you," he says, holding it up, and he watches for the smile he hopes will spread across his mom's face. Oh, look, there they are, happily eating ice cream in front of his house. I think in this story, Milo figured out that you cannot judge a person immediately, right? And if we look beyond just the exterior or the front or the face, we see that we actually have a lot in common. I think that's what Jesus meant when he said, "Come to the table," that everyone was welcome at the table. We may think we're different, but in the end, we're all God's children, and we all should be working together to love one another and to love God. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you in person next week.
Thank you for your continued financial donations. You may give online at maccob@macbrethren.org. That's maccob@macbrethren.org. You may mail your gift to the church office at 200 North Carey Street, McPherson, Kansas 67460. Or hand deliver your check to the church office. Just push it through the mail slot at the Education Building. If you join our worship from afar, please donate to local needs in your area. Thank you for sharing.
Our scripture focus this morning comes to us from the book of 2 Corinthians, from the Apostle Paul writing to the new Christians as they're trying to figure out how they are to be in this world. I was thinking when Laura was talking, Dax, I'm going to put you on the spot. You can just shake your head, yes or no. Did you get to know any new kids that you didn't know at Bible school? No. Was everybody what you expected them to be? Kind of? Yes? Kind of no? Any surprises? No surprises. Ada. Did you get to know new kids when you were helping? Any surprises? No surprises. Kids are pretty predictable. I had a couple of surprises, some pleasant surprises with kids that I didn't know real well that I got to know. That experience of being with kids you know, kids you don't know, getting to know them in different ways. I'm glad you were both there. The Apostle Paul was traveling. He was meeting people he didn't know. All sorts of new people all around the Mediterranean, and he was telling them about God. And he just didn't know what to expect when he met them, had no idea what was going on. And he was writing letters. He was sending letters back to people that he'd already met, and it's not like he could go to the mailbox and put it in the mailbox on a Monday, know that it would get there Thursday. He had to have people hand deliver those letters and communicate. And so it was a long time in between. He never knew when those letters were going to get there and when they weren't. So think about Paul, think about him traveling, think about him spreading the news of God and writing back to people he'd already met, constantly being in a state of welcoming people to the table, constant hospitality and a constant invitation to come and get to know God. So in this particular instance, he's writing that letter, pre-writing it, not knowing when it's going to get there. And he says to those Corinthians, we, and he's referencing himself and Timothy, who is traveling with him. He says, we are working together with God. We are urging you not to accept the grace of God in vain. For God says, at an acceptable time I have listened to you, and on a day of salvation I have helped you. See, now is the acceptable time. See, now is the day of salvation. And then he goes on to talk about himself, which Paul often does. And he talks about all the things he has done, all the things he has endured, all the things that are going on in his life, which is partly about Paul, but just partly what you do when you catch up with people. You make connections and you let them know what's going on in your life so that they understand what's happening for you. And then as he's closing, he says, we, Timothy and I, have spoken frankly with you, Corinthians, and our hearts are wide open to you. He extends that gracious open table and hospitality across the miles with a messenger handing a letter. He may not even know who the final person is delivering that letter. He says, there is no restriction with our affections, but maybe only in yours. In return, I speak to you as children. Open your hearts wide also. So he's challenging them from afar to continue to set the table, to open it wide. It's a pretty tall order that Paul is sending over the miles back to the Corinthians. He says, God's heart is wide open to you. Our hearts are wide open to you. Our hearts are wide open to everyone we have met across the Mediterranean. And when your heart is wide open, here are the qualities that will be present: patience, kindness, genuine love, truthful speech, the power of God. You may not be popular. In fact, you may be reviled, and yet you will be bringing new life to those that you invite to the table. And you will be sharing the will and the call and the intent of God. And when should you do this? When did God do this? Well, now. Now's the acceptable time to invite to the table. God has shared with you, Timothy and Paul have shared, and it is now that you are to share and invite to the table. All this talk of time just is where my head has been with this scripture. If I have wrestled with it, time keeps circulating in my head, and I am so aware of, as you are, that at both times time can be fleeting and time can be plodding. Depends on where you are and what you're doing and who you're with. Time is a construct of our own imagination. When I learn big picture and then I fill in the details. So in school, when I was taught details but I didn't have a big picture, I just didn't get it. I can think back of struggling time over time, especially in math. You don't need to understand the big picture, just memorize the formula. I remember an algebra teacher telling me that you don't need to get this, just memorize the formula and apply it. And I just needed the big concept. And I clearly remember in grade school when it was time to learn how to tell time on a clock, I was trying to use 60 minutes in a clock and somehow make that fit into a system of tens. So I couldn't figure out when people would say 10 till the time, and then they talk about 50 minutes and 60 minutes. I was trying to make that fit into hundreds because everything was in hundreds, 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and I didn't know there was this arbitrary 60 minutes in a clock. I mean, I did, but I didn't, and so my 10s were getting mixed up with my 60s, and time was such an arbitrary thing, so I truly did just memorize so that I wouldn't be the outlier, so that when people said, and quarter till, well, okay, quarter was 25 cents, but then it said 45 on the clock, but then it was in 100, but it really wasn't in 100. You can see my confusion, that artificial construct of what time was that we as humans had put in place. And not understanding months. Remember that old thing we have kids memorize of, okay, I'm not even going to be, you guys, what's the thing that helps kids memorize the month? 30 days has April, June, and November. All the rest have 31. All the rest have 31 except February. Yeah. Okay, so we have randomly decided to use that 365-day calendar, but every 4th year we mess around with February in order to make up because we've messed with the time and it doesn't all turn out. And then you put into that the calendar of the moon cycle, right? Which is not 30 or 31 days. It cycles on 28, 29 days. And then today is summer solstice. Tonight at 10:23 Central Time is summer solstice, when we officially jump from spring into summer. And I couldn't figure that out as a kid, right? Okay, it's been 105 last week. Spring? Are you kidding me? It's like we are just now officially moving. All of that time is artificial. Things that we have put out there and decided they're going to be a certain way. Time, it's so odd. We also decide that at 5 years old, kids are ready for kindergarten. I remember in my dad's early years, he was an educator, and he always said, that is so false. The way you know that kids are ready for kindergarten is they have to be able to take their arm, put it over their head, right, and touch their ear. Kids who are not developmentally able to do that are not ready for kindergarten. And you can take Dax, see, you can do it, you're good. Kids who cannot do that, it is true. You should not put them in that box. If their hand is still up here, they aren't necessarily ready developmentally for kindergarten. And yet we force kids in a linear timeline. You know, you're supposed to know, I don't know what you're supposed to know, Ada, right now, but there's a list, right? At this age, you're supposed to know X, Y, Z. And adults are the same way, right? We're supposed to know certain things by age 30, age 40. My siblings and I laugh. We're all developmentally delayed, right? We look back and we're like, oh man, I wish I'd known in my 20s what I learned in my 30s, and in my 30s what I learned in my 40s, and we're just like a decade delayed, finding things out too late. But we decide as society, and we put on people what they should learn, when they should get married, when they should have children. We decide when people should carry a gun, when they should drink alcohol, when they should go to war, when they should retire, when they should stop driving, when they should fade into the background and keep their mouths quiet. And all of those markers are artificial. Take any 5 children and lay them next to each other, and you will see them unfold differently. Leapfrogging, lagging behind. I don't know, as doctors, if it's frustrating to you all to have those growth charts. You know, you have that curve, and here's the average, and there are kids that are way below that curve, and there are kids that are way high above that curve. I remember my kids were like way tall for their age, way ahead of time, and they're not unusually tall, either one of them. And my oldest was way underweight. I mean, we look back and we're like, we're terrible parents. She was so malnourished at the time. We look back at those pictures and we're horrified, and that was all just artificial. You know, paying attention to the kid, paying attention. And I'm not discounting those charts. I understand what you use those for. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that we need to pay attention to what is real and what is artificial. Becky Bowman did crafts for us this week at Bible school. And Becky has a special interest in gender studies. And she said she just read some research she was sharing when we had some downtime in crafts, and she was sharing that standard that we say boys have terrible handwriting. Have you heard that standard? Oh, boys have sloppy handwriting, and when boys don't have sloppy handwriting, we're like, wow, you have nice handwriting. Well, now there's new research coming out that clearly shows that the age at which we teach handwriting, girls' brains are developmentally at a different place than boys' brains. So girls' brains are ready to read handwriting, or to learn handwriting at that point. Boys' brains aren't. If you wait until their brains get to the same level, the same developmental stage as girls, then they learn handwriting just fine and they don't have sloppy handwriting. Again, all these false narratives of when it's time to do things and when it's not. And the church does that, right? We do that all the time. We pull out our bylaws and we pull out our Constitution and we say, we must have a meeting on the blah, 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 because Wileen, you've been chair of the board. Marla, you've been chair of the board. Leela, you're chair of the board. Dan, you've been chair of the board. All those false markers that we put on ourselves as a church, that we must do X number of things at X time, and we don't pay attention to what's happening with our kids and what's happening with our congregation and where God is leading us. The Apostle Paul is an itinerant minister, a wandering preacher, traveling with the disciple Timothy, sharing God's message, teaching and preaching the word, sharing the gospel now. He wants the people at Corinth to open wide their hearts. He explains the ways in which he and Timothy have done that, and Paul keeps reminding them, now is the time. He doesn't want them to open their hearts tomorrow, or only on Sundays, or only on high holidays. Think about the Jewish New Year. He doesn't say, open your hearts on Passover, open your hearts on Yom Kippur, open your hearts on Hanukkah. He says, open your hearts now, today. Yesterday, unless you were in a cave or sleeping all day, you could not have missed the fact that it was Juneteenth, right? Yesterday. It's now been declared a federal holiday. And I will confess my own ignorance, my abysmal ignorance about Juneteenth. I had never read about it. I had barely heard about it. I had not been taught about Juneteenth in school, in high school, in college. I had never read a book where it had been referenced, and that's because I'm white and I'm privileged. I never had to know about Juneteenth, because it didn't affect me, or my parents, or my grandparents, or my great-grandparents. I have just floated along with June 19th passing me every year of my life, never stopping to note the significance of Juneteenth. Well, finally, now is the time, believe it or not. This incredibly important part of the history of the United States, the history of slavery, the history of race relationships, finally now is being brought to the forefront. And finally, a privileged white girl has had her eyes opened. There have been years of people in the background working diligently to bring this moment to fruition. They have always been working now. I am just now working now. I heard the most delightful, informative, and personal conversation during an interview. It was between Melissa Harris Perry and her guest, Brittany Cooper. Brittany is a professor at Rutgers University, and she's author of a book titled Eloquent Rage: A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower. Some of you may have heard that interview this week. If you have not, I recommend it. It was on the takeaway this week. And the conversation was about Juneteenth, but it centered around the concept of time, stolen time. They talked about the 2 years in Texas when slaves had 2 years of their lives stolen from them because their white owners did not tell them that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. They had power over them, and they decided that now was not the time. And there were people who died in slavery during that 2 years not knowing. In their conversation, they talked about how we get a hold of our time, how we reclaim our time. The person who was being interviewed recalled a speech that Martin Luther King had made where he didn't do his normal speech. We always talk about Martin Luther King and looking to the future and doing what we're doing now for the future. Only in this speech, Martin Luther King said, there is a fierce urgency of the now. There is such a thing as being too late. She went on to say, we must live our lives in a state of perpetual urgency. What a great quote. We must live our lives in a state of perpetual urgency. That is what Paul is calling the Corinthians to. He's saying, set the table and don't wait. Set the table and invite people that you know or you don't know. Milo's eyes were opened on the bus. He got to know people in a different way than he imagined they might be. And Paul is calling us to that process. Why should we let culture and society dictate our timeline? Why should we let what other churches in McPherson are doing dictate our timeline? Why should we let the denominational offices in Elgin dictate our timeline? We are called to pay close attention to now, to here, to the people in our congregation that you may think you know, that you may not really know. We are called to the now. One last quote from that interview. To control one's time is to resist. I thought, what a great idea. Let's be the radical Jesus. To control our time is to resist, to be radical, to invite anyone and everyone to the table. And you know what? That table may not look like this. And that table may not be at 10:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. And that table may be partly recorded so that people can go and be with their kids on Sunday morning, right? Can we resist the forces of culture, control our time, and choose our time to be God's time? Finally, one last thought on Father's Day that has to do with time and has to do with broadening the table. Our culture in the 1950s was a culture that said mom stays home and dad leaves the house to work. I watched Leave It to Beaver. I've seen that little apron on her running around the house doing the wifely things. And our culture said that's what it should look like. And the reality was there were many fathers who left the house and went to work and missed their children's lives. I was the last of 5 to be born in our household, and my father was not allowed in the delivery room when my siblings were born. By the time I came along, my mom didn't make it to the hospital. She made it 3 blocks down the street in a tiny little town, and I was born in the doctor's office. And I was the only child that my father got to see born. Scared the foo out of him. He said no more after that. My mom said doctor handed me to my dad. He said, what do I do? And the doctor said, don't drop her. So that is the 1950s model that somebody arbitrarily told us is the way you should be a father. And then my brothers both came to be parents, right? And their wives could make more money than them. So they stayed at home full time and they raised their children. But let me tell you a secret about that. Their wives left every day to go out and work. And guess what happened? Their wives missed the family. And their wives missed raising the children. didn't have to do with gender. It had to do with who was home full time and who was leaving the house full time. So that wasn't the best solution either. And now I see couples struggling to do both, to work and to take care of their children. And I see grandparents picking up the pieces, pitching in and pitching in and pitching in. And we have a culture that tells us you can do it all. You can have a career, and you can have a family, and you can volunteer, and you can do sports, and you can do music, and you can go back to school and get your master's, and it's all possible. Well, guess what? It's not. People are burned out and burned up and stressed and worried, and volunteers are disappearing from all kinds of places in our world, places that are in need of people with a heart and compassion who want to go forth and share God's word. So when we hear to take back your time is to resist, when Paul says take your time and take it now, now is the time God gives to us now. Take and give now. Open the table to anyone who can come. And you might have to change the way time is set up by culture and the way society tells you time should be run. God communicates that there is time for all, and there is space at the table for all. Paul calls the Corinthians to that simple reminder. Now is the acceptable time. Now is the time for you to do the same. Set aside your false schedules, your culturally pressured calendars, your mile markers, your milestones that somebody else told you you have to meet at a certain time and certain day. Set aside your false narratives about how you should father, about how you should parent. Set aside your damaging, altered histories about how people who are differently cultured and colored should treat one another. There is an urgency. The seasons come and go. The cycle of seasons are relentless. The wheat is almost out of the field. Do not wait. Open your arms wide now. Set the captives free. Listen to the children. Love your partner. Serve God's message. Listen to the cycle and the rhythm of God's creation. It is time now. I invite you to rise and join in singing number 145. seated. It is time to leave this place of sanctuary. It is time to go out and re-engage in the secular world. It is time to meet new people and meet God who waits for us. Time to share God's boundless hope. Time to put your faith into action. Time to practice God's uncalculating, grace-filled love. It is time. So as you leave this place, go forth in God's name.